Wake up, South Africa. You are being replaced in real time and you don't even see it. You telling me right now, if you don't see any signs of South Africans being replaced, it's either you're blind or you refuse to look at the signs. Because everything that we are looking at the moment has been done before. The South African population is being replaced in real time, and we are allowing this government to do it. Let me tell you something about immigration. I'm sorry. I cut my workout short because I wanted to deliver this message. One thing that drives immigration is opportunity. Opportunity for jobs, opportunity to start a business, opportunity to get good healthcare, opportunity to get free education, or crime. And what is happening is our government, because they are looking at working on a plan to replace us as South African population, they are intensifying the issue of mass migration into this country, and they're giving them incentives. How am I saying that? How do you explain a situation where people can cross the border and come into this country illegally, arrive in the country under the false pretense of whatever they're saying, whether they're pretending to be a visitor, they come here after when their passport expires or their visa expires, they change that to become asylum seekers, and that gets approved, and they get a job, and they get SASA, they get all sorts of benefits and healthcare and education. Why would a government give such an incentive for somebody that broke the law? South Africans, you are being replaced. And I'm not talking about black South Africans. I'm talking about black South Africans, white South Africans, Indian South Africans, colored South Africans. Wake up! You are being replaced by this government because this government has realized that they can no longer keep the promises that they promised you in 1994. They can no longer provide an economy that can give you the jobs that you want. They can no longer be able to carry you. You're a burden to them because there's 50% youth unemployment in this country. 50% of people in this country are on some form of a grant. You are a burden to the South African government. What they want to do is they're replacing you in real time with other Africans, because other Africans can cross this border illegally, get into this country, operate in an informal setup where that informal space of business is reserved for South Africans. Why would a government that cares about you let other people come from other countries illegally, so arrive here, claim asylum fraudulently, and then be allowed to operate in your own spaces, on your own street, where you have millions and millions of unskilled South Africans? As somebody who was raised by a domestic worker, unskilled South Africans have to go and look for jobs as domestic workers, as gardeners, as plasterers, as handymen, as plumbers, and electricians. That 200 rand a day of doing somebody's plumbing can put food on the table for that day. But even those jobs are taken by illegal foreigners. And let me tell you something, this government is actually giving them incentives and also making sure that they get away with fraudulent documents. You tell me, if you're a South African who has been watching what kind of corruption happens in this country, do you believe any piece of paper that a foreigner produces to you as some form of a government permission to be in the country? Would you believe that piece of paper? It's not worth it because it's full of corruption. So what happens is, when these foreigners get in here, they get incentives to be here by giving them healthcare and free education, and now they can take the females' surname. Now you're gonna find somebody named Farouk Mahlangu now. But the bottom line is that they are replacing the South African black population with other Africans, because now South Africans that are unskilled cannot even get a job as a waiter, they cannot get a job as a gardener, they cannot get a job as a plasterer, they cannot even get a job as a bricklayer. All those jobs are being taken by foreigners. So when this South African citizen now cannot get a job here, now they're thinking, you know what, let me just organize, get to Machonisa or something and get a 500 rand loan so I can sell something at the corner. When they get to that corner, an illegal foreigner is selling their own stuff over there at a cheaper price. You cannot open a tuck shop in this country because it's been infiltrated by these people. And this government is allowing it to happen because they are replacing South African citizens in real time. Wake up, South Africa, you are being replaced. Because let me tell you something. You can tell me now and say, well, the jobs you're talking about, those are the small jobs South Africans don't want to do. Like Malema says, that South Africans don't want to do slave jobs. So let me tell you something. This goes deeper. They want to start infiltrating our education system, our policing system, our government departments, our financial institutions. As we speak right now, the Department of Basic Education has hired foreign-born teachers, and we have 30,000 plus South African teachers that are at home unemployed. As we speak today, the Department of Health is hiring foreigners as doctors in these public institutions and public hospitals while we have doctors in South Africa that are sitting at home and doing nothing, including people that are qualified as pharmacists. So what has happened is they've allowed them to infiltrate our department. So let me tell you something. When you put somebody from Ghana as the head of HR in the Department of Higher Education, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to fill up all those posts in the department with people that come from Ghana, their cousins and friends. And once they start occupying those positions of power, you know what they're gathering? They're gathering influence. And once they have the power and the influence, there's going to be a security guard from Ghana, there's going to be a receptionist from Ghana, and then you, as a South African born citizen, you will not even have access to that place because they've infiltrated it, they've gained all the power to control it, and now there's nothing you can do about it because the law gives them the power to exercise it. So those are just jobs. Soon they're going to be occupying our justice system, going to occupy our policing system. And you know what's going to happen? What is going to happen is slowly they want to gain power into this country. And as they gain power and they invite their cousins and their kids and their cousins and their friends, what's going to happen is we will lose power. Every time this happens, we lose power. And then eventually they'll be able to qualify as councillors. They're going to become mayors and they can change policies in this country that suits them. While South Africans are at home, sitting at home and doing nothing. And you know what? Half the time, let me just make sure this thing is on. Half the time I see people coming on TV and say that, South Africans, these people are not here to take your job. These people are not, let me tell you something. Immigration is led by opportunity. If they're not here to do a job, what are they here for? South Africans see it every day. They're here for jobs. They're here to start a business. And both those things have to happen under extraordinary measures where you have invested money. Yes, you can have a business in South Africa. But you cannot occupy the informal sector of this country that is reserved for South Africans. What kind of a government that is supposed to look after you will let that happen? You're taking away the opportunity from people who are unskilled and poor. Number two, why would you hire so many people in your departments while you have a 32.7% unemployment rate in the country? What kind of a government does that? So now if you look at our higher education institutions, all these positions of power have been occupied by these foreigners. And as they gain power and influence in those departments, our institutions of education will be led by them. What do you think happens when you appoint a principal and that principal is somebody from Zimbabwe? Soon enough, you're going to have a CFO who's from Zimbabwe, you're going to have a secretary who's from Zimbabwe, and before you know it, there's all sorts of languages being introduced in our country. But because by that time they've gained so much power that they can influence our law and order in the justice system, you can run to all the courts you want, but when you get to the courts, guess who's going to be sitting in those benches? It's going to be them, because now they've extended their map of power and their influence in justice, judges, policing, all the policies that you hold so dear. Your democracy has handed it over to foreigners. Why do you think Julius Malema is willing to die on this hill? Because he's made the calculation. If you let 10 million people into the country and you let them sit there for 10 years, they've made babies, they've come here with babies, those babies are now documented. Even if you have mass deportation programs, you cannot get rid of more than half of those people. So you've got 5 million people that have walked in this country and they're infiltrating your departments. They're infiltrating every sphere of our life in this country, from security to domestic worker to gardener to all these positions. Before you know it, they're going to be making policies and dictating what happens to us in this country. So I believe right now, South Africa, wake up. If you don't wake up, you're going to be replaced and you won't even realize it. Let me tell you something. I just talked about Africans replacing South Africans. But one thing that I also see as a pattern, if you look at Europe right now, once this whole thing, the last phase, the final phase of replacement of populations, is what we're seeing in the UK, where now there are so many of them in the country. They've occupied councillor positions, they've occupied positions of power in policy making and all sorts of spheres. And then before you know it, they start censoring you. When somebody comes on a platform like YouTube and talks about foreigners, they get censored. When a foreigner comes on YouTube and says that South Africans are idiots, South Africans are uneducated, South Africans are filthy, South Africans smell like rats, They're just expressing their feelings. When foreigners come in this country and start protesting, it's going to be called human rights. When South Africans protest against mass immigration and illegal immigration, you're going to be called xenophobic. So that is the final phase where now the government is going to censor you. You cannot say how you feel. When you say it, you get cancelled. But then the foreigners can keep doing what they're doing, and then the numbers increase every year until you are now under them. 100 years from now, when you and I are gone, this country will be totally different. Your grandkids will be the illegal foreigners in this country. And the kids of these foreigners that are here now. Have you seen how arrogant they are, these people? Imagine they take hold of power in our country. Have you seen how arrogant Nigerians are when they come on TV? Have you seen how arrogant Somalians and Ethiopians are? They look at us like we're dogs. Imagine they had power. Imagine we had a mayor of Joburg who is Nigerian born. Can you imagine what will happen to us? We will be put in cages. So my message today to you is, wake up, South Africa. We are being replaced in real time. I think I was about to make a point about Europeans. When I'm looking at Europe, Europeans that are born in Europe, that hold the history of that beautiful continent, as we speak today, they're being treated like second-class citizens in their own continent, in their own countries. They're not allowed to speak against any foreigner in their own country. Like somebody asked me the other day, are you guys against immigrants? That's no, this is our country. We decide who come into our country and who doesn't. And nobody can tell us otherwise. If it's our country, it means that we can decide who comes to visit. And if you come to visit, we give you the paperwork to visit our country, and you come here and disrespect us, we can then cancel that invitation and send you back to your country. It's our country. So what the point I was trying to make was that even with the farm murders, what I'm realizing about farm killings is that every week farmers are being killed in a very, very terrible way. But the government does nothing because they want to drive away the farmers from their business. They want to drive away the farmers as far away as possible. They want to drive away. The way that I picture this whole thing is that they want to replace South Africans with Africans and all these people that are coming from Ethiopia and Somalia and all these crappy countries. And once they've done that replacement, they'll be able to control them, because once they can control them, they'll be able to continue being in power. If today the government decided that they're going to document all the illegal foreigners that are in the country, who do you think they're going to vote for? Who do you think they're going to vote for? All these Ethiopians and Somalis that are running business in South Africa illegally, if they had to be documented, who do you think they're going to vote for? They are going to keep the current system in power because the current system allows them to get away with crime. Those are my thoughts for the day. Until then, stay safe.